possibilities to build up an army before the enemy is coming. And then you don't have, then you also have to monitor your army of natural enemies and to look at the balance between pests and natural enemies. Cultural controls, sanitation, resistant varieties. Cultural controls. Sanitation. Very important. If you start with IPM, integrated pest management, you want to have control over populations of insects. And that's pretty new, I think, for growers in Vietnam. If you run into a greenhouse over here, you face weeds, you face even plants in the greenhouse where you grow sweet pepper or tomatoes. The best thing is to use your greenhouse to grow sweet peppers and don't grow weeds over there, because pests can easily survive in these weeds, in these plants. So if you grow sweet peppers or you grow tomatoes, just grow these products in your greenhouse and try to avoid that wheat is appearing, that you have some other plants in the greenhouse. That's sanitation. One of the issues is to look, or you can find varieties that are a little bit more tolerant. Here they talk about resistant varieties, but that's difficult. But you can find tolerant varieties for example, for specific diseases. For pests, it's more of a problem, because pests, tolerance or resistance for pests, I have never seen. Physical controls. That means that it's not only introducing natural enemies. You also have to do physical things like monitoring, like implementing sticky traps, like hanging out roller traps to catch and kill, and all kinds of things. Light traps. In case of moths, which are flying at night, you can help your system to catch these moths before they lay eggs. Insect screening. If it's possible, it's a help. It's not a must, it's a help. Because on the other hand, if you start to use insect screening, you are always doing some negative things in your ventilation. So that's always a question. In Europe, I think less than 1% of the greenhouses have insect screening, because they are more based on having good ventilation. And if you close your greenhouse with insect screening, you also have to face that if you have a problem in a greenhouse with insect screening, you always deal with the same population. So resistance is even more of a risk. If you talk about whitefly and you have insect screening in your greenhouse, still you have whitefly in your crop. The virus risk is much higher, because the whitefly which is in your greenhouse, the virus will be more aggressive. So insect screening is not always the solution, but it can help. It's an open door, because it's party today. We are in the situation that we can use biological controls, Unfortunately, not all the tools, but René and Jindu are working on that. But we have the first tools, and we can start. So we can start to use parasites, predators, microbials. That's a very good start to build up experience with integrated pest management. Again, a greenhouse is not a natural environment. It's a surface where you want to produce high amounts per square meter. So you always need to have tools where you can correct pests when they run out of hand, or diseases when they are present. But very important, if you start working with IPM, that you use the right chemicals. I think 95% of my job in Europe is to help growers to use the right chemicals at the right time. That means that if we start up IPM in Vietnam, we have to put energy in finding the right chemicals to correct, if necessary. If necessary. Because if we start to use the wrong chemicals, and keep in mind, it will happen the first years it will happen, you ruin your IPM system, and you have to start up again in a new crop. And we have to face on resistant management. But you know, using IPM is already doing resistant management. To give you an idea of IPM, call it strategies. For me, it's a way of doing my job. Again, it's not only introducing biologicals, because many people think that introducing biologicals is the solution. No. It's changing your mind a little bit and using more tools than only biologicals. Using more tools than only chemicals. Again, and you will see I come back to that time after time, monitoring. Monitoring is the basic process to do IPM, but also to keep the cost in hand. And to do the right thing at the right time. So you have to keep in mind that if you start using IPM, that you need to take some time for monitoring. But the return on investment is very high, I can tell you. Cultural measures, physical measures. Of course, the biologicals is a very important part. And still, we need the right chemical compounds to correct. And that's the whole picture of IPM. Essential steps in IPM, again, there it comes again, monitoring. Don't think that Jindu is monitoring over here. Because he's not a grower. He is not really knowledge about biological control, not about chemical control. We need people in the greenhouse who knows what they are doing. So we need people in greenhouses who are doing monitoring that are on a certain level of education. they have to know what they talk about. They have to know, they need to have a little bit of a background of a grower, an agronomist. Monitoring is a job. How often? Of course it depends on the crop. Of course it depends on the time of the year. But you have to make a kind of regular schedule to monitor. If I can give you an advice, because if you have to build up experience with IPM, if you want to keep the cost a little bit in hand, if you don't want surprises, start to do it weekly. Start to do it weekly on the same day in the week. Because then you start to see changes. And to come to the right level, to educate yourself, to build up experience, the best thing is to put energy in monitoring the first years very frequently. This is what you have to do with monitoring. Many people, when we start, they think that counting sticky cards is enough. To be honest, it tells you nothing. It only tells you, is it present or not? Is it going up or not? Is the population going up or not? It tells you nothing about the infection of your plants. So you always have to check the sticky cards and the plants. Sticky cards you only catch and kill adults. But all insects have different stages. But the larval stages, the nymphal stages, they are in the plants. So it's not enough to count only sticky cards. So you need plant inspections. A tool to have an idea of different pests going on in your greenhouse is pheromones. Pheromones trapping moths, for example, because they only fly at night. Moths are only flying at night. You can easily trap with pheromones. So you get an idea, controlling these traps, of the pressure, the infection pressure. To give you an idea of the possibilities with biological control, and to give you an idea that biological control is not just introducing products. Biological control, part of IPM, is introducing systems. For most pests, you can make different choices. Again, the toolbox in Vietnam is not filled yet completely, but we can start. If you look, for example, whitefly control, which is really important, because I don't know whether you know, but whitefly is the most important pest in the world. It gives the most economical damage in the world. Everybody thinks that it's thrips. No, it's not. Thrips is the second pest that gives the most economical damage in the world. Whitefly is very important because all the chemicals are available for whitefly are not 100% resistant, but 80%. So the effects of the chemicals is very, very low. That's why it's not only to introduce a product. You have to make a choice. And a strategy for whitefly is not only introducing parasites, you also need to introduce predators. To give you an idea, in sweet pepper, it's not the best host plant for whitefly, keep that in mind, because tomato and cucumber are much better host plants, eggplant. But sweet pepper, still, whitefly can build up. And if you look at sweet pepper, we introduce a predator, Swisky, because he is eating the eggs and the larvae. And you can also introduce a parasite that is parasitizing the larvae. So it's more or less a system. In many countries we have different choices, different predators, different parasites. In Vietnam we also need different parasites because in Vietnam we have to deal with mixed populations, different whiteflies. It has to do with the climate. And we have to do with predators. I was checking the environment. I found the best, the most aggressive predator for whitefly over here in the environment. So I think we don't have to introduce it, because if you start to use IPM, it will enter the greenhouses and it will help you to treat the whiteflies. Spider mite control is also not only introducing phytociders, it's a kind of system, because we have to do with natural climate circumstances, and sometimes phytociders is not the best option. Sometimes you need to make a choice, for example for Californicus, because they are less sensitive for climate issues. Just to give you an idea, biological control is not only introducing a product, it's a system. That's why it's really important that you have contact with a good advisor. And that there are people that can help you to make the right choice. And we will give the right information to people in Vietnam to make the right choices. We are active in 80 countries with our natural enemies. So we know all the climate circumstances. So we can really give you the right advice. So we will educate people from our partner over here to make the right choices. Because I think it's important to have good results. Same with trips, same with aphids. Aphids also is a common pest all over the world. To give you a little bit of an idea, I think in the 40 years that I'm active in integrated pest management, I faced around 30 different species of aphids. So sometimes you really have to know which aphid you have to deal with before you make a choice to introduce a natural enemy. Of course we have predators which are not selective, but only predators is not enough. Fungus gnats, in your climate conditions, fungus gnats can be really a pest. In many countries it's not, because If it's too dry climates, fungus gnats is not really a big issue. But over here in Vietnam, where we have to deal with more natural growing mediums, climate conditions, fungus gnats can be a problem. Why? Fungus gnats, the adults, they are not really the problem. The larvae, they are harming your roots and you don't see it. Fungus gnats you can easily monitor on sticky traps. So you can follow the population and you can follow or it's going up or down. If the population is growing too fast, you really have to do something. And you can see, you can do something. I mean, there are products to help to keep the fungus gnats under the damage level. Because that's always what we talk about. We want to keep the pests under the damage level. That's also what we have to find out in Vietnam. What is the threshold in Vietnam? Because you know, the most difficult part of implementing IPM is that you have to tell growers, you have to accept some pest in your crop. That's really strange, because if you only rely on chemicals and you face a pest, you start spraying. And now you have to change your mind, because you have to accept some pest in your greenhouse, because you know, if you want to keep your natural enemies going, if you keep your IPM system going, you need your friends, you need your natural enemies. They need food, they need hosts. So it's very difficult for growers to accept, but it's really interesting to find out which is the threshold. And then you need people to advise you. Don't mind, it's okay. You have some pest, but your army is strong enough. Let it go. Don't interfere, let it go. That's the big step that we have to make. But you will see, it's very interesting. It's very interesting. It's very interesting to see the power of nature. And now I want to have a break because I'm tired.